There's death, there's destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live. This is why we need independent media.
Cheers and salutations. Welcome one and all to another episode of Hard Lens Media. My name is Kit Cabello, and today we have ourselves a special guest returning back after doing so much outstanding work, especially covering the crisis and the aftermath of the Lahaina wildfires. Joining us again after wrapping up most of the film work for a second documentary, none other than someone who speaks truth to power, who's done great work in Central and South America as well, Craig Jardula Pasta. Good to see you, brother. Welcome back to Hard Lens Media. Much love to you. How are you holding up, brother?
I'm holding up good. I got my old school super progressive shirt on.
As you should. As you
remember
should.
this shirt over here? The back in the days when we were all trying to get on this shirt. Elizabeth Burke, where you at?
Oh,
progressive. Take a look, Kit.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that back in the day. My goodness. Those were innocent. That was an innocent era, you know, an innocent era, a time that long since has passed.
90% of the people on this shirt are disgraziad. AOC, Tulsi, Bernie, Jamila, Chank or Chunk, depending on how you want to say it. You call him Fat Tony. How nasty.
Well, I mean, hey, listen, as far as I'm concerned, never hero worship politicians and don't put people on a pedestal because they'll always disappoint you. But, hey, lessons learned. But we all call this out, especially in regards to how much of a failure our entire system has become and what a disappointment many of our politicians are, especially as we enter into the 2024 election cycle, most notably the Democrats, as they are panicking with all the times they have dropped the ball with inflation, crisis after crisis, and looking at the American people, we see the people, what happened to the people of East Palestine, Ohio. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have safe, clean drinking water, and the people of Lahaina suffered the most devastating wildfire, not only in Hawaii's history but in U.S. history. So many people displaced, a one-time $700 payment. That's if they could even get it. Numerous examples of how politicians at every level failed to systematically try and prevent the fire, but also stop first responders from actually doing their jobs and saving lives. So, Craig, what actually made you go back to Maui and Lahaina? Because in many ways, what I feared would happen. That is the great blurring effect where eventually people just forget the big disaster and focus on the next thing that's going to capture their attention because we have these smartphones in front of our faces 24/7.
Well, you just hit it on the nose for the first reason why is because we knew it would be forgotten about it and they'll be moving on. And if you just simply look at your history and you look what happened at Katrina, after that catastrophe had happened, all the people that were left behind, they were completely forgotten. Nobody was telling their story. And they were going through some bad, what's the word? Government negligence. They were just left for left out in the dark, and eventually a lot of them had to leave New Orleans after many, many years. Who knows where they ended up, but it was a real struggle in their life. So that's the reason why I wanted to go back to Lahaina. Because I knew that the Main Street would continue to just move on. The national government, that state government over there, would try to just sweep these people under the rug. And so it was mainly about highlighting what the survivors have went through, people who had lost houses, family members, businesses, all their stories. Because I knew, and I said this before too as well, Project Veritas had showed up with their hidden cameras and some other reporters, Kit, and they were trying to have this gotcha story. Like, we're going to get to the bottom of this and find out what's going on. And I was like, no, this is years, decades of water diversion that led to the conditions in which Lahaina would be turned into a tinderbox. And it's going to play out for years to come in the city councils, in the boardrooms, in courtrooms. This was going to be a story that's going to be told for quite some time. So the plan was get there within a month of the fire, which we did, and then get there 100 days after the fire, which we did. And I mean, it is a very sad story, but we also picked up our game. If you can imagine, the contacts I made the first time out, how the second movie would be, Yeah, I mean, we got to talk to some elected officials out there, just a new movement that's going on. And I can tell you this much. Obviously, the number one issue, uh, obviously, other than the fact that they're still not telling everybody what happened, there's still no transparency. There's still no understanding why there was such an awful breakdown in emergency services during a fire, in which they had a fire in 2018 in Lahaina, so they already had a pregame, a warning, but they didn't do anything about it. They didn't learn anything from that particular fire. But the biggest issue is housing.
Mhm.
It's about to come to an end. There are close to 6,000 people plus displaced, and their housing is about to come to an end. Red Cross's housing is running out. The FEMA housing is running out. And so, the biggest movement that's going on that island right now is the fishing for Lahaina, or fishing for housing, in which these 30 groups, 30 grassroots groups, there's like 28 of them. They might be expanding by now. Who knows? They've banded together or bonded together. I don't know which one I'm going to use in that. And they've used what's called these ancestral laws, which is if you're fishing in Maui, you're allowed to sleep over on the beach. So they set up a ton of poles out there. There's like 3 dozen poles set up, 2 poles set up.
Wow.
They have a bunch of tents behind them. And they set up a makeshift kitchen, a medical tent, and they're going to hunker down on the beach. And their demands are that either the governor or the mayor has the power to have an emergency proclamation. They have something called the Minatoya's list, which is a list of 2,200 short-term properties. Airbnb is pretty much. They want the mayor to turn those into long-term properties to house the fire victims. So this is all like, it's fascinating in a way. It's sad, Kit, but it's fascinating. This kind of dives into, well, what rights does the government have? What should they do? What can they do? The state knows if they do this, they're going to get sued by these owners. But this is libertarian versus socialism. This is just amazing, and it's so intriguing when you think, what should they do in this situation?
Well, what I want to ask you, and I think, because I remember covering this article here too. I just want to pull this up here for our viewing audience. But this came out on September 11th of this year. It's long past time the mayor of Maui to answer the public questions about what happened as Lahaina burned. And then there's this tweet as well where you called him out. Where's the mayor of Maui? I met with him. I met him to set up an interview, but his assistant didn't return my calls. Many of his constituents and fellow lawmakers are fed up with his absence. So what is going on? Because, you obviously were there, you set up the meeting, and there was this article that came out, as well as a few others that were calling out his leadership for my viewing audience and for everyone else, because I think a lot of people have forgotten just overall, so many people like the mayor and everyone else around him at every level of power didn't do their job or their responsibilities. So has there been any kind of interaction with his office, especially after you posted that tweet? Has there been anyone able to speak out on behalf of the mayor to you while you were there? What exactly went down?
So I went to one of these emergency meetings, these assistant meetings, these updated meetings. They're a limited group of people. The water management services were there. The waste management water services were there. Members from the fire department, members from their local EPA kind of style representatives, the people who are working on the air quality, setting up air filters and these machines designed to measure the toxins in the air. I mean, there's so many things that are going on. The mayor his office has since returned my call, so kudos to him. He seemed like a real cool guy. I went up and I shook his hand. There was no cameras allowed in that meeting. But there are people who are frustrated with the mayor. And, it's going to come out in my movie. I interviewed a local House representative, the House representative for Lahaina. Her name is Ellie Cochran. And she had said she had communicated with the mayor twice since the fire. And I found that to be just incredibly odd. I'm like, you're the House representative in Lahaina. You live in Lahaina. You had a distribution center over here, and you've only communicated with them twice. And there seems to be a lot of frustration from, the citizens saying that they don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but they're getting a little bit frustrated with the mayor dragging his feet. However, he does seem to be doing, certain things. He did show up to that meeting. People were talking to him. So he's not completely hidden. I believe the term is Hanaka, right? Of Hawaiian descent. Is it? I don't know if it's Kanaka or Hanaka. He is Hanaka, right? So he is a Hawaiian. He's generations there. Everybody says he has a lovely voice that he plays the ukulele and he can sing too as well. But I mean, they're trying to give their answers that they feel is adequate on why these services broke down. And they're showing up and they're visible at these meetings, and you can talk to them, the mayor and some of his assistants. But, I don't think the people are satisfied with a lot of the answers they're getting. They don't find them acceptable, and that's, like I said, there's still a lot of kind of like questions that need to be answered. We interviewed this one girl named Shelby Hassana, who wrote a book, Burn Back Better. And I thought her perspective was really great because, you have a lot of people out there, and you'll see them in the movie, who talk about why this fire started. We have to ask those questions. I don't want to stay focused on that, Kit, because, that can give you into, that could spin you into directed energy weapons, space lasers,
right,
weather modification, all that stuff, right? It's like kind of like, okay, this is too much for me. It is okay to ask those questions, but what are we doing now? What are we going to do to help the people move forward? I think, to me, that is the biggest issue. And how are these services breaking down right now, especially this housing situation, which is, at the end of this month, in a couple days, in 2 days, I think that 30% of somebody had told me, I can't verify these numbers, but there are people who told me who are close to monitoring the situation. A big portion of that housing ends. Mid-December, another big portion ends. We know there's close to 6,000, 7,000, between 6,000 and 7,000 people displaced. What are you going to do? That's where I'm focusing my energy, on those services and those people. But, people are still frustrated. And there are people like Ellie Cochran, though, that House representative, who gave me an interview. And it was an amazing interview. It really was. I can't wait to share it with the world. I can't wait to share this video with the world. You can see behind me, Pasta to Go. We're kind of finalizing the logo for my new show. And,
as you
I have
should.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have a YouTube channel with monetization, and I haven't had that for 3 years.
I'm so
and this
sorry.
show, it's going to be, I know it's terrible, but you know what? Hey, we do what we can do. And, God bless people like you and Hardlands, who've always given me a platform to talk. And, Rockfin was good to tape it up, but we're going to see how we can move forward. This, my personal show over here, is going to be a cross between, Anthony Bourdain, Tucker Carlson, and Bobby Bacala from The Sopranos. And we show a lot of that. We love
Bobby. We love Bobby.
We love Bobby Bacala, right? He was also, if people don't know, in The Sopranos, he was the nice guy. He was the nicest. There was a scene where Tony Soprano's sister Janice was like, "No, Bobby's different than all these guys. He's heartfelt. He's a good person, and he also loves his food." So in this movie, I get to show some food. I get to show some fun stuff. Even in a bad situation, we make light of it. But I'm very excited to show the world this movie, and I can't wait for it to come out. And a lot of the questions that people are asking, it's hard for me to answer them, because you're in that gray area, Kit, of like, what do you say? How do you answer it? What do you do? Are they doing a good job? Are they not doing a good job? I will say that there's a lot of strange elected officials in Maui that do a lot of stupid things. There's biolab engineered mosquitoes they've released on the island to help for the bird population. They want to plant more new invasive grass. One of the big discussions is the soil tack. So you have all these ashes, and you start going through the ashes. These ashes go in the air. So we want to put this chemical soil tack in there to clump the ash so it doesn't go in the air. Only problem is, what happens with those clumps? Will they get washed into the ocean? Will they mess up the reef? It's never been tested before. So even though there's a lot of crazy, kind of weird, elected officials in Maui, people like Josh Green, who was the keynote speaker at the UN for Sustainable Cities right before this happened, you also have a lot of local indigenous representatives where the people are connected to them, and they seem to be working as best they can in the arena they're in to try to get these situations resolved, to try to work for their people. So it's a very interesting mixture in Maui. So when you see the movie, you'll be able to make a lot of decisions for yourself, because you'll just see it straight from the horse's mouth.
Now, it's one thing to talk about politics, and we could be here all day talking about the politics of Lahaina, but I'm pretty sure your documentary is going to be bringing it up, and especially seeing the people's rage towards the politicians. Because I've played a couple of videos of some of the town halls where people are worried about what's going to happen to their property, what's going to happen to their livelihoods, and let's face it, Hawaii is a place where people go for a vacation, and tourism is a big part of their bottom line. So the last time you were on the show, you talked about some of the small businesses you've met when you were there. 100 days have passed. I kind of at the edge of my seat, but what happened to some of those businesses that you visited? You get a chance to talk about some of the restaurants that you had a chance to see, but are they getting on by? Is there any kind of relief program for these small business owners? Because not only Hawaii, but nationwide, the whole country is just struggling to make ends meet. So what's happening to these small businesses in Lahaina?
You know, interesting you asked that. We didn't go to Hana this time on the other side of the island to show how it affected the other side of the island, but those guys are still out there cutting coconuts and making ribs. So they're taping it together and doing the best they can. And Kid, I think you mentioned before too as well, before the fire, they already had a situation,
Right.
where they were very desperate. There was a big homeless problem and people were suffering, especially from COVID, because that really affected a lot of their businesses. And people are really torn, right? Do we open up Lahaina? There are people who are saying, don't come here. Now is not the time. Let us grieve. Let us get things together. And then there's people out there who are like, we need you to come. Please come. So it was a very kind of touchy situation when you talk about it. We were able to talk to two new business owners that we didn't get to talk to the first time. We put up a video on it. One of them was the guy, he had two stores, Maui Toy Works. And one of them was in downtown Lahaina, and it burnt down to a crisp. It's gone. And, one of the crazy things is when we asked him, I said, when you left the store that day, did you realize there was a chance you might not ever see it again? And he was like, no, we left that store thinking we'd be back there working tomorrow. And he'd owned that store for 12 years. That was his flagship store. And, to see it just burnt down and not even go in there and pick up the pieces. And now what is he doing? His other store, which is right next to Lahaina, it's still in the city of Lahaina. It's in this one indoor mall. Well, that mall doesn't have water right now because a lot of the water services have been shut off in these areas. They've been contaminated. The heat melting the PVC pipes, leaking into the water has caused some problems. So he is not opening his other store right now. So what is he doing? The guy who was next to them in the Maui print store, which was one of the oldest school print stores out there, it was all local Hawaiian artists that they would make prints of their artwork and put them in frames and sell it. So the majority of the work they were able to save when it burnt down.
Well, that's fantastic.
Wait 1 second though, Kit, because did lose $22 million worth of old school maps because they were known to collect all these old school maps. All gone, Kit. Can you imagine? I mean, and this is something I mean, like if we went into the map store, this is something I think like, kids got that quirkiness. He'd be like, look at that map right over there. These old school maps, they're all gone. You can't bring those back. They're no longer in existence. But that guy who owned the print store, who's good online, went and helped the toy store guy set up a business online. And can I go grab something real quick to show you what he's got?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll go ahead and filibuster here real quick here, folks. So listen, we all know that Pasta's doing a lot of great work. See, like Pasta to Go right there. He is setting up his second YouTube channel, and obviously, when the video does come out, I'm going to give it my thoughts and analysis as well. So make sure you guys check it out. Look, support your favorite independent media content creators because the censorship is all too real. So there you go. Hey, look at that.
So this is Aloha in his toy store. And he started off as a kite guy, like, had a kite store and it kind of expanded. He'd been there in Maui for 40 plus years and it expanded into, puzzles. And I was able to go into the other store and we got some video of that, and I was able to get a ukulele made for the weather that's made for like, the beach and stuff and take it down and give it to the people on the beach who are now hunkering down that beach. But her name is Aloha. They made these skirts. They put them on. They made a little lei and put them on. And it says Maui Strong. And she's actually born the day, August 8th of the fire. She has a little poem But now they've set up Maui Toy Works and they're selling these online. They've been able to sell a lot of these online. He's converted one of the bathrooms in his house kit to one of the storerooms. So he's taping up the pieces and keeping it together. But, when the guy came over from the print store and he wants to open up his name is Chris. Chris wants to open up the first print store. He managed that store that lost those $22 million in the maps. He made this this whole logo, Lahaina, rebuild, reimagine, and it's the banyan tree with all the stuff. He was able to talk to us about what he experienced the day after when he went back into the fire. So we have some of those stories we documented, and it's heart-wrenching, man. What he was telling us, what he witnessed, and what he saw. It's really, it's intense. Another local business person we were able to talk to was somebody we met at the distribution center. If you guys remember the first movie, his name is Surfer Scott. He took us through one of the distribution centers. Well, he's no longer at the distribution center. He's trying to put his life back together. He had a surfing shop in Lahaina that burnt down, and he would give lessons. We went to his house where all these old surfboards, where he was going to give them away or throw them away, some of them. He's now trying to refurbish them. You know what I'm saying? Because now that's all he has. And he's back out there giving surf lessons. And I don't want to ruin the movie, but he gave me a surf lesson, so you have to see that one.
All right. Pasta surfing. Things that was not on my bingo card for 2023. So there you go.
You're going to get, oh my God, they're not on the bingo card. So let's, but this guy lost everything, you know what I'm saying? And he's just trying to pick up the pieces and put it together. And we talked to him about his story and everything he lost. He also went back into the fire the day after the fire, and he told us what he witnessed. It's scary when you hear with these people who went back in there before they were able to blockade the place up.
Right. So let me ask you this then, Pasta. In regards to this, because I kind of want to bring this back towards our good old friend Joe 30330. Has there been any talk on the ground about the Biden-Harris administration or how people are feeling about the Democrats and Biden's, out of touch kind of response to it, and even regaling the people of Lahaina about how he almost lost his house, even though it really wasn't a fire. It was like maybe a 10-20 minute fire, and he almost lost his cat, his house, his car, or whatever. Is there any talk about him and his administration and at one time $700 that the people of Lahaina got, if they got it at all?
If I was a therapist dealing with a person who got dumped by his wife or got forgotten by his wife, I'd say that Maui is really good at moving on. They're not clinging on to that. They've accepted the fact that the government has left them behind. Remember, these distributions that we showed in the first one, this was all set up by the people. It was the people taking care of the people. So they understand that they have no help from that national government. Now they're spending more of their energy and their time pressing their local and state governments. And I think that's where their energy is right now. So they've accepted the fact that the government is left them behind and turned a blind eye to that. I don't think they're that surprised, being their history. They already had a lot of big distrust in the national government, didn't like the national government anyways. But the first time we got out there, it was an insult. It was a kick in the face. $700 they're giving us, and they're giving Ukraine all this money. Now they're just like, all right, how do we fix this? How do we move on? I will tell you this much too, as well. In my tweet on Twitter, where I said the 3 things we learned about Maui this time out, the first one was there's no lack of transparency. The second one, that housing is the biggest problem. We go into both those subjects. But the third one is that a lot of people are just defeated. There have been a lot of people who have left island. And that's Hawaiian talk. That's how they talk when it's not left the island. They say left island, on island. So when I talk like that, I'm talking like the Hawaiians that are there. There's a lot of people who have left island. There's a lot of people who had a lot of fight and demanded answers that have just given up and are just taking whatever the government tells them. So there is that point of people, they're exhausted. They've dealt with the trauma. They don't want to deal with it no more. So they're just moving on.
God damn it. All right. Well, it's devastating to hear what's happening there. There are some stories of hope and rebuilding, because obviously you have to rebuild. But in comparison to your first time there and your second time now leaving, Do you feel optimistic overall? What do you think is going to be happening, or is it a future uncertain for the people of Lahaina? Because we've covered this before on the show, as did you and a few other people in independent media, where you have celebrities, most notably Oprah and The Rock, who set up that fundraiser. Oprah, who has what I believe a large estate property that's almost on par with Central Park in New York City, your backyard. Then you have these large real estate developers and these venture capitalists swooping in, buying up land. Is there some kind of light at the end of the tunnel? Will there be a pushback, or are we just right now prepared to sit back and see the establishment, I guess, win again as people are displaced?
Well, the feeling was when I left is that I'm going to have to come back again. Obviously, this story is yet to unfold. Surfer Scott, who we interviewed, gave the best analogy. He goes, this situation, it's like the bottom of the first, and we're only getting started over here. And I said this too before. This is something that's going to play out over the next several years. And I plan to casually return to the island, do some reporting, and moving on. But, I mean, right now, it's still the thick of things. And I'm caught in no man's land because, I said this before in the first one. All right, if there's ever going to be a people out there that you don't want to mess with, where the government says we mess with the wrong people, that's the people of Maui. And I'm talking all of them, not just the indigenous or the locals. And I'm talking even the Haole people who look like me and you. You know what I'm saying? They are together. They are connected and they are ready to fight. And it's going to be interesting with this housing situation because the government's going to have to do something. And what should they do? That Minatoya's list has 2,200 properties. You can't force private owners to do stuff. This is when I talk about good governance. If the state, because they supposedly, and I'm trying to track this down, because Ellie Cochran, the elected official, told me, she goes, there's supposedly millions of dollars here already. Or supposedly they have somewhere $400 million somewhere. Where's it at? Where's it being spent?
Where's the money?
Not knowing. Yeah. If you spent $200 million on housing, you would solve it for the year, right? Like you could tape up the housing situation for 1 year with $200 million. That's a bargain compared to what we spend for all these other wars and all these other countries and all these other areas. I mean, compared to what we give to Israel every year. These are our own citizens here. So if the governor and the mayor would just go to the people on these Minatoya's list, which is these short-term Airbnbs, and say, look, we'll give you 50% over what the yearly market rate is, plus we'll provide insurance. You can be involved with the process of picking the tenant, and then we'll highlight your names. We'll put your names in highlights. They would probably get a lot done where they don't have to force them to do it. You know what I'm saying? But there's ways they can leverage this whole situation. This ties into the argument of good government. When I say I'm a leftist libertarian, I say I'm a libertarian. This is the areas in which I'm talking about, right? You're not going to let the market just work itself out in the situation. If you just leave it be, these people are going to have to leave the island, right? You don't do something to help house these people and you just let it work itself out. It's not going to work itself out. And the people of Lahaina, the indigenous people, they're going to have to leave. So this whole situation on the beach where you have all these local grassroots groups together and they're very focused. They're not being assholes. They're making demands, but they're being very polite. They're giving government a chance to react to their needs. So it's going to be a very interesting situation. I'm tied down and in tuned with a lot of people there. We're connected. We're talking. And I was saying that I went there a month after the fire, and then I went there 2 months after that month, 100 days out. So 1 month, 2 months, I figured I'd go back in 3 months. I don't know. I'm going to have to maybe go back sooner than that, Kit, because this situation with the housing is what is the biggest need right now, because that's the most important thing. When I say it feels like a managed gentrification, this is what I mean. The lack of transparency. There's also another problem with tiny housing, Kit. These HOAs,
the tiny houses.
The tiny houses. The HOAs are blocking these tiny houses for getting set up. We were able to find a group that was able to get up a couple tiny houses, and we actually filmed and witnessed a tiny house be put up, and it was quite amazing. But, what right does the state have? Does the HOAs get to stop these houses from getting put up next to them? Or should the state come in or the county come in and say, no, this is a dire need. This is a crisis. This is a situation, and we need to do what we can do to house these people. So this housing situation is just coming to a boiling point, and we have to see how it plays out. I have some hope, but I'm also have some fears. I don't know what's going to happen. It really is. It's a fascinating situation right now that ties into the questions of our isms.
Mm-hmm. You know, Pasta Man, once again, man, you're hitting it out and you're killing it. And I'm glad that we have people like you on the ground talking about Lahaina. And I want to be clear again what I mean about a blurring effect. And it's, look, we are all victims of it. And what I mean by it is we see things on social media, and there's a lot of great things on the internet. There's also a lot of god awful, terrible things on the internet. And when a crisis takes the front and center, it's what people talk about, and give it 2 weeks or a month, then it's forgotten. You know, a show of hands, how many people forgot that the U.S. government did a whole big shebang about UFOs and aliens? You know, people forgot, oh, yeah, the government talked about that. We have this crisis in Lahaina. We have the crisis in East Palestine, Ohio, where 4,000 people were exposed to dangerous chemicals. We got Flint, Michigan. We've got unchecked inflation and so much more. And I think it's important for us. It's our social responsibility as citizens to do our due diligence to remind ourselves what's happening. And I know there's only so much an individual can do, but we mustn't forget that these things are happening. And in this 1 year alone, we are witnessing firsthand Americans just struggling just to get on by. And to the people of Lahaina, you're not alone, and your story needs to be told. It's a story that I think it's something that every single American needs to take into account too, because we're seeing such a massive amount of abuse by our politicians on both sides of the political spectrum. And people need to find our voices so we could stand up and fight for each other. And more importantly, give community relief to each other so that we're not beholden to institutions that purposely don't do their job. So I think as a final note, I want to at least share your social media here. So folks, if you're not following Pasta, first of all, number one, what's wrong with you? Number two, what's wrong with you? Because here's his brand new YouTube channel, Pasta to Go, and there you can see his video Lahaina on Fire. It's at what, 49k views? It needs to be at 100k. Make it to 1 million views. Here's his YouTube channel. But also, is there anything else that people can be made aware of, or where they can go to follow you online, and or any other projects that you'll be working on? Because man, you're doing a great job, which is why I like to call you one of the dauntless few.
Thank you, man, and thank you, Kit, for always providing your platform for me to come on and speak to your audience. You know, I always talk about when we started this thing, me and Fiorella, you were one of the old school guys too out there with us, and you got your boots on the ground. So a big part of what I do, like I said, you know, is boots on the ground. This Pasta to Go show is going to be in studio stuff, on the ground stuff. It's going to be a little mixture of everything. It's going to be a hybrid of what I do. You know, we're supposed to go to Venezuela this year and observe that election, maybe Mexico, maybe India, definitely the United States, but we're putting it all together. If you can go and financially help us out, if you guys are in a position to do so, please do so. As you know, there's no corporate sponsors or any sponsors at this point right now. Who knows, maybe a local pasta store will kind of sponsor the show. But, you know, if you go to GiveSendGo.com/Lahaina on Fire. That is my Give Send Go. That's the best way to do it. Up on my Twitter at Yo Pasta, I have all my links, my PayPal, my Venmo, you know, all that stuff. You know, it's amazing that I was able to use Jimmy's platform as a big megaphone to get this out there. You know what I'm saying? I had 6 days off, and I was able to just jump out there and, you know, and go to Lahaina, and I felt compelled to do so. But it was you, the people, who really sponsored this event. You, the people who fueled this event. You know, people were throwing $5, $10, $20 here and there, and it goes a long way. But that's what we need to do if we want to get independent media out there to succeed. If we want to get the truth of what's going on, if we want people to get off their butts and go over to these spots, then we have to fund it. You know, and I know it's hard to ask people who don't have any money, barely any money, to give a few bucks. But those who did and were able to do so, thank you so much. If you're not able to do so, share their work. Go watch Lahaina on Fire Volume 1. It's close to 50,000 views on a brand new channel. And
make it to 100. Yeah. Make it to 100.
Yeah,
make it to 1 million.
Yeah, it really needs to get more play out there because once again, all I did was, I went and I highlighted the people of Lahaina. What do they have to say? What are they going through? What are they experienced? That's what I tried to capture in both these documentaries. And this next one is going to be, if you like the first one, man, you're going to really like the second one. We upgraded a little bit. We brought lavalier mics.
Good.
People who didn't want to interview us the first time because they didn't know who we were. Some of them interviewed with us the second time. So we built relationships. I mean, that's one thing I think I do well, Kit. I'm one of those guys who, if I don't know anybody, I can go into a room, start talking to them. And before I leave, they'll like me. I'm a people person. I've always been that. That's been my greatest gift. And I tried to use it to my advantage here in Lahaina to get closer to people. We were very kind. There was somebody out there day one who didn't like us filming and said so. It only happened once this time. You'll always have those people, but it's a very sensitive situation. So you need somebody who can go in there and just talk and whatnot. And I was able to use my skill set there and do so and get into some places where a lot of people wouldn't get into. You mentioned Flint, Michigan in the beginning. I really did think about Flint, Michigan. I did think about East Palestine, Ohio, and I thought about the people who went to those places. And some of those people did a good job. But for me, I felt I was made for this type of work right here. Like, this is what I can do. Yeah, I like spending some time in the studio, breaking some stuff down and deconstructing the news. That's always fun. But when I get out and about, I feel like I'm in my zone. I feel like I'm in my element. And I was able to really succeed this time and get into a lot of spaces where other reporters might not have been able to.
As you should. So, Pasta, look, I appreciate you making time out of your day to join us. I know you're going to be on another show too. So, more importantly, brother, just keep on speaking the truth. Keep on doing the great work. We're going to get situated with our rest of our main show. So, Pasta is always happy to collaborate. You're always welcome to be a guest on the show as well. So, yeah, what's up? What's up, brother? You're going to give a final note? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say we have a Convo Couch at noon today, Eastern. So in an hour and 20 minutes, me, Fee, and Nico House, old school Nico House, will be joining the show today. We're going to be talking about, we're obviously going to be talking about Elon Musk visit to Israel and what he's doing right there. We're going to be talking a little bit about the same situation over here. We're going to be kind of exploring what role should government have when it comes to getting housing for their citizens in the middle of a crisis. So we're going to talk about that. And then later on at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight, I'm going to do Pasta to Go. Angela McCardle, the Libertarian chair, we're going to talk about that same issue in Lahaina, coming from a libertarian's perspective. What should the government be able to do? Remember, a lot of libertarians are let the market work itself out, no government intervention. But this is a situation, clearly, if the government doesn't do something, a lot of people are going to be displaced. And that's a shame right now. These people have been living on that island for centuries. You know what I'm saying? Their families, Kit. So something needs to be done. We need to have conversations about this. But thank you so much. Go ahead and watch for Pasta to Go. We'll see you later. Forget about it.
And by the way, as a final note, be sure to deliver this message to Nico as well as Fiorella. Chicago Style is more than happy to deliver its recipes and delicious treats to you guys.
Yeah, I was sitting there. I was being nice. You're being nice. I didn't say anything, kid.
I'm in charge of the show. And you know what? Chicago Style sends its love to NYC. You know what? Next time you three are here, we'll get some nice pizza to go and here in the Windy City of Chicago. So much love to you, brother. All right. Yeah. I want you to have a great show.
I'm going to come visit you, brother. I love you. And thank you for all the work you do, man. Thank you for all the work you do to be able to come on your show today. I mean, think about it. 6-7 years later since we started this gangster shit. Here we are.
And by the way, listen, I want to just, again, give a huge shout out to not only all of our audiences, but keep on doing the great work. These past 2 months have been a little bit of a headache, but I'll tell you that next time you're here in Chicago. So much love to you. We're going to get situated with the rest of our show. Pasta have a kick-ass show later on, so everyone be sure to tune in. We're going to get set up for the main show just very soon. So just stand by. We're going to take a short break.
Idolatry, that's just fake. And all that wallowing that you tolerate, that's that's not faith. The kings of colony watched autonomy make our graves. The kings of colony know no policy, only rape. Now once you fall asleep, it won't bother you what they say. But the kings of colony, while they slaughter, they still complain. And we say, please color me, still too solemnly, still too plain. All hail economy, praise the pharmacy, seas in flames. They're buying up Hawaii, and the smoke's not even cleared. Those vultures smelled the fire and an enterprise appeared. Investment opportunities where melted down communities leave vacant space BlackRock has been lusting for years. The council meets in private and they don't discuss survivors. Concerns among construction groups are all Lahaina hears. They'll wander through your city with this mocking sword of pity next to Oprah and her camera crew who tore the Trail of Tears, where footage flows as freely as the stream of liquid steel and the pools of pure aluminum that trickle down your wheels. And Biden's here to say he knows exactly how it feels, cause he had a kitchen fire once and had to miss a meal. And people still believe that piece of shit deserves your vote, like he's not why supplies are being smuggled in by boat, like he's not why our citizens were forced to stay and roast. And he can't unfreeze your funding, folks, cause Azov needs it most. I'll bet my every dollar Biden watched it with a smile. I'll bet he knows the whereabouts of every missing child. He's just the kind of man who lives to trample something tribal, collecting culture's corpses just to throw them on the pile. Like he and all his buddies didn't dream about the day when those who dared defy the donor class were cleared away. When home insurance triples and you can't afford to stay, and your land falls to the hands of those whose windfall fan the flames. The state will take Lahaina and they'll bastardize its name, and tourism will swarm it all the same. You see, the state we left Lahaina shows the ground rules of the game, the planes that in the night ignite the planes. And if questions raised that reckon the potential use of lasers, I suggest you take a closer shave by way of Occam's razor. And if those civilians stood between this country and its gains, then there's really nothing further to explain. Because you may know this already, if you truly know our past, but it ain't the first occasion and it will not be the last, where Americans are kettled in and made to bear the blast, are barricaded in and left for ash. How many in Lahaina now are lying there awake and still can hear the city we left leveled in our wake? They still hear all the people that we let the fire take, instructed from above to stay in place. So look to the horizon, 'cause a fire comes for you. Desire made incarnate of the power-hungry few who instructed the police to not let anybody through, to barricade them in, and so they do.